The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Our next session, Ms. Erica Rayburn from Hamilton County Schools and Ms. Blanchette Coulter from Hamilton County Schools. So they are presenting today, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. Blanchette and I are very excited to be here. It's always a great opportunity to come and meet and network with colleagues from across the state. So like she said, my name is Erica Rayburn. I am the high school ELL content lead.
And I am Blanchette Coulter. I'm the secondary math content lead.
Yeah, and just a little bit about our district. So in Hamilton County, we have about 45,000 students. About 14% of those are English learners. We have about 5,000 English learners receiving services and about another 1,000 transition students that we are monitoring. We represent kind of urban, suburban, and rural settings across our district. Our schools also have a great variety in size. We have some schools like a 612 that is only 300 students versus some high schools that have about 1,200 plus students attending there. Some of those schools have maybe 5 English learners, and then some others have as many as 500 English learners. So a wide variety of like kind of backgrounds and contexts within our district. And so we hope that as you're here today, you'll kind of know that whatever context you're representing, that we have similar situations in Hamilton County and have found some success with the things that we're talking about across the board. All right. So we're talking about, it starts at the top, school leadership that moves the needle for English learners. So particularly thinking about instructional leadership. Our goals for today are to look at some effective professional development practices for all teachers and to identify effective ways to implement ELL supports across all classrooms. So to get us started, I wanted to give you guys a second to think about what is some effective professional development that you've experienced and what made it effective, what made it impactful for you. So let's take just a second of private think time. Then we'll have a second for some partner share, and then we'll share out. Let's take about a minute of private think time. Think of some good PD you've experienced, whether it's something that you led that was very impactful or something you experienced as a learner. Turn and talk to a shoulder partner just about what that effective experience was for you and what made it so effective.
Have a goal to implement, even if it's small. I think usually like making sure that it's relevant to what the teachers, I guess in this case, are.
And I know we have to have the share a little bit, but I like things that you
And just the same as teaching. I mean, educators have to be thieves and take an idea and then manipulate it to work best in whatever your area is.
All right, so let's come back together. All right, so let's hear from a few people about what were some of those experiences and what made it effective.
Okay, Bedford County, Penny Kell. I think we basically all 4 thought the same way, but for it to be effective, it needs to be something that is pertinent to us, that we can implement and know how to implement, not just get it and still have to figure it out.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, what else?
I'm Sabrina Cox, I'm with Ray County. We were also talking about giving the participants opportunities to have ownership of that professional development. So they're walking away with something that they feel is important and that they had a voice in order for that initiative or the plan that you're putting into place to work.
Absolutely, yes.
I think it has to be engaging. I don't want someone to sit and talk at me for hours.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, so we were looking at the research about effective professional development, and we pulled quite a bit from Linda Darling Hammond. These 7 are some of the elements of professional development, which you guys have essentially already named some of these. But so the first one, it has to be content focused, has to be relevant to what the teachers do day to day. And it has to include that active learning, engagement. You have to be able to do things. Also that it supports collaboration within the teacher's job and what they're doing, uses models and modeling so that they can see what it looks like, that we're not leaving it kind of up in the air, that we're showing them exactly what this could be. And then also that they have that additional support, so coaching or expert support after the fact to help them implement it. Opportunities for feedback and reflection, so for them to receive feedback on how they're implementing it, but also to reflect and think about what this could mean for their practice. And then the last one is that it is of sustained duration, that it's not just a one and done, that this is something that is revisited, that they have multiple opportunities to engage with this over time and develop in that practice. So today, Blanchette and I are going to kind of run you guys through a Algebra 1 lesson as an example of professional development experience for teachers that can really incorporate some of their content practices, ELL supports, and upcoming content. And we kind of have this formula that we've used for our PDs and have found especially effective because it makes it relevant to the teachers, incorporates what their students needs, those ELL supports. Dr. Richardson talked about coherence this morning. Great way to incorporate coherence into the classroom. So what are those practices happening in the English language development classroom that could also be incorporated into their math classroom to develop their language in math as well as their content knowledge? And something that we found is that even though we specifically call it out as an ELL support, these language learning strategies and practices, like they're good for all students because all students are learning academic language. You know, no student is born speaking algebra, right? They're all learning that language together. And so even though my lens especially is on supporting the English learners, this has been beneficial for many, many students. The third part of kind of our formula for professional development is that we incorporate it around upcoming content. That we try to think a week or two ahead what the teachers have coming up in their curriculum that we can center this professional development around, because then once we're done, they've seen it in practice, they have the materials to do it, and so we're removing barriers for them to then implement it in their classrooms. When they walk out of that professional development, they have no excuses not to at least try it whenever they come to that point in their curriculum. Today, as we move through the lesson, you're going to see some hats on the slides. So if you see the top hat on there, then that means that we are asking you to engage as an educator, as a teacher. And if you see the baseball cap, that means that we are asking you to engage as a student, as a learner would. So just kind of pay attention to that, and we'll try to call those out as we go through, just to think about how are you supposed to be viewing this particular slide? Are you viewing it as from the teacher lens or from the student lens?
All right, so we're going to segue into worked examples. Hamilton County did some work with TDG, Teacher Development Group, promoting worked examples in math, really in any content, but my focus is math, so I'll speak to math. Really pushing in on worked examples, and worked examples push kids to the process of thinking. How am I thinking about math? How am I problem solving? I'm not just trying to get to an answer. The answer is already there, right? So I'm more concerned with how the student is really thinking about math and explaining math. And so that is the whole concept around the worked example. Not only does it do that, but it also provides access for all. So like Erica just said, it's not just helping the English learners, but all kids, right? Everybody's learning. So it's not taken away from anybody at the same time. It also pushes kids to make connections to prior knowledge and also future learning. So taking what they've learned in a previous grade or subject, right, and applying that to what is in front of them right now and where they may be headed with the teacher, okay? All right, and so pushing in with those 8 standards of mathematical practices, these standards also push kids in that thing I was talking about, in the thinking, right? The process of the math. All right, and so the 2 that we will be focused on today will be the last column. So it'll be the construct viable argument, which is more of explaining their thinking and listening to others, as well as the attend to precision. So we're looking for that student to be precise, right? Be accurate in your explanations. And so those are the 2 we will focus on. So as we go through the presentation as a learner, you'll see those icons on my worked example, and it's just telling you that we're pushing on those 2 practices. However, any of the 8 can be pressed on, right? Even though I'm focusing only on 2, I can hit all or most of them as well in my lesson, okay? So here is the task. If you notice your cap, you are a learner at this time, okay? So which solution makes the most sense mathematically to you and why? So I'm gonna give you a little private think time.
All right, guys, let's go ahead now and take just a minute to talk with a shoulder partner about kind of which one you think makes the most sense, explain your thinking. We're going to do a structured talk protocol for this. So partner A will start off. We'll have about a minute or 2 to explain your thinking. Then you'll switch roles. Partner B will explain their thinking, and then you'll have a couple of minutes to compare your thinking. So in your partnerships, I would like partner A to be the person who woke up the earliest. So go ahead and figure out who's partner A. You'll have about 2 minutes to share, and then we'll switch.
Well, I woke up about 5:30 Eastern time, so I don't know.
I guess the one where they lined up the correct, you know. Yeah, that one made the most sense to me. But that's all my thinking.
I went with number 2 because I felt like I needed to line up the terms, but I'm
just saying, it's been a long time since I've had algebra.
Oh wait, now it's B.
All right, if you haven't, go ahead and compare your thinking. What was similar? What was different? Compare your thinking. All right, so let's go ahead and come back together. All right, thank you guys for engaging in that. So as I'm listening, I'm hearing some really great thinking, but I'm not really hearing some of that like precise math vocabulary that we're looking for. And so remember, one of the things that we want to do today is that we want to attend to precision and really use that mathematical vocabulary that we've been working on. So Blanchette and I are about to pass out a word sort. You have 20 cards here. There are 10 pairs. You're going to match each word to its representation, okay? So let's do this. If we can kind of get in groups of like 3 or 4, that would probably help us out. So let's take a few minutes to work through our word sort. Here we go.
I think so. Do we want to sort these by the problems in the words maybe, or maybe they already are? No, they're not, I don't think. So
This one I think is variable. Right? Is that what the arrows are pointing to?
Yes.
X,
What
Y.
X, Y, yeah.
Like terms, maybe.
Oh, yep. I agree with you.
Okay. All right, guys, let's come back together for a second before we move on. All right, so we've had our student hat on. So let's take just a second to take our student hat off. We're going to put our teacher hat back on. So the words that you have in front of you, we're going to use that for our next activity as a word wall. For teachers in the classroom, there are many ways they could do that. So Blanchette and I have an example back here of how we recommend our teachers do it, is to have the word on the front with the representation on the bottom. And as a teacher, for today, for our purposes, since we're a large group in this large room, we went ahead and just put the answers up. Your teachers could also have students explain their thinking and talk about which pairs they made, and then check them with what you have up for the word wall in the classroom. So many different ways to go about using that word wall.
They could use this as well. I mean, you know, a lot of teachers do use the TVs or the projectors, so they could project something like this. But I think it would be beneficial to at least have actual word wall still, where the kids can interact with that even during the rest of the lesson, right? Not just for this moment in time. So.
All right, so now we're going to come back to our structured math talk about our worked example. We have looked through, we've done our vocabulary activity to kind of remind you about some of the math vocabulary. And remember, today our mathematical practice that we are trying to focus on is to attend to precision. So using the word walls that you have now at your tables, let's revisit our worked example and explain to your partner again your thinking around the problem, paying special attention to make sure you're incorporating this vocabulary. All right, so we'll take just a few minutes. Again, we'll use our same protocol, partner A talk, partner B, and then compare your thinking. This time I'll let you guys kind of run through it naturally without giving you the cues. But go ahead, let's take about the next 3-4 minutes for you guys to revisit that conversation with your math vocabulary now.
Goes first. Standards. One of our focus is precision. So I'm going to share with you how we did that. Is that what I'm saying?
So which ones have these on them? Looking for the
Our coefficients were aligned
within the polynomial
to find like terms.
The cubed number would go first.
Yes.
So that's another reason why students 2 solution makes the most sense mathematically.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we used polynomial. You said polynomial.
And then
All right, I'm going to call you back, call your attention back to me. I'm going to take us back here to our word sort with the answers. Did anybody have any questions before we go into which student we agree with and why? Did anybody have any clarifying questions?
Can you explain degree of polynomial?
Polynomial?
The degree of polynomial, that term?
Yes. So the degree is the total amount in that one term. So if it was 4x to the second plus 1, the degree in that term is just the 2. That's the degree of it. It's the 2. It's the highest degree. Yep. Well, you actually add them up. So we ask you for the degree. If I gave you 4x squared plus y, then the degree would be 3. Because the y is 1, and then the x is 2. Can I get some people to share out who you agree with and why?
Okay, so I agreed with student 2 because I like to group the variables, the degree of by degree of polynomial. I like to group those degrees together. Makes it more organized and streamlined to me.
Thank you. Anybody want to add on, or they had a different approach? Yep.
I would like to TPR build off of my colleague down the row. I agree that I think student 2's makes the most sense because they aligned the like terms when adding. I think it would be easy to make a mistake adding it number 1, and I might put 2x and 4x squared together, but they don't go together because they're not like terms.
Okay. Can you speak to me about why they don't go together?
Absolutely. So 2x does not have an exponent, or it's invisible, but that's not, the x squareds have to go together because it's like the amount of x squared. So there's 1x squared plus 4x squared would be, there's 5 of them. And there's still only 2 x's, and then there's the number 8 can combine because constants can combine without variables.
Okay. And then we have one right here.
I'll speak as a English person.
Okay. Thank you.
Who looked at this and said, student 2 has a big gap in theirs and it doesn't look as good as student 1, who lined them up really neatly. And so I like student 1 because that's how I would add any numbers on paper if I didn't have my phone handy to use the calculator. Yep. So I went with student 1.
Okay. Thank you. We got one back here.
And I will speak as the non-English speaker. I like math. Because sometimes that's what you get in these kind of conversations.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about that misconception for a while. So I would agree with you all when you said student 2, right? What my first comment I got was the degrees don't match. I think that verbiage is really important because when you say the variables don't match, the variables do match. What is the variable?
X.
It's X. All of them have X's. So just being aware of precise language when we're teaching all kids. So the variables do match, but my first participant said the degree of the variable does not match. And so that is where the misconception can come as well. My participant here who said, I line them up like I do math, this has a big space in it, that doesn't make sense to me, right? But if I'm lining them up by degree, that's the way it goes. I'm grouping them by degree or no degree, which would be my constant, right? So that was to piggyback on the misconception. Any questions? Yep.
I just want to say, as a former ESL student, when I learned the English language versus my native language, I become a very visual processor, and I process the exponents, x2, and I line them up. Just categorically, that makes sense to me. I think most English learners learn that way. It's visual. They take the concrete, which is on print, and they try to make sense of it first. And that's how I explain it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it.
All right. So that kind of concludes our lesson. So we're taking off our student hat. We're putting our teacher hat back on. So just to think about what we just did, what you experienced as a learner, which some of you were true learners, right? Because it's been a minute since we had some math. So that was fun. But so just thinking about how did the word sort and the word wall provide access without reducing the rigor of the worked example? Because we talk about that a lot, is that we want to support students, but also still maintain that high level of rigor. So let's just take a minute of private think time, think about what you just experienced, and how did those supports maintain the rigor of the lesson? Let's take a minute of private think time. Take a couple of minutes to share with a partner. How did the word sort and word wall provide access while maintaining rigor?
I feel like it gave me more of a hands-on approach of really thinking and actually looking for things that could clue me into what made sense from the background knowledge that I did have, I think the word wall can, it helps keep the rigor because it's the scaffold, it's the support.
Reading disabilities or my students that have language, gaps, you give them the vocabulary to explain themselves. So all they have to say is polynomial or variable. They can match the picture or the numerical representation of that. So you're giving them the same definition without all the extra words for them to have to fight through. So that's something, and you could, again, put it on the wall so then they can see that. So when they're talking about it, when they're doing their work, they see that vocabulary. And so when they get to the test, or they get to TCAP, they're like, I've seen exponents, I've seen polynomial, because that's something that I've seen and we use over and over again.
Yeah, I like that, what you mentioned about it already has various levels of support. Like you said, it has it's tactile, hands-on, and then the color as the visual.
That must feel good. I started
All right, I'm going to take that lull as my cue that we're ready to share out. All right, so let's come back together. All right, let's hear from a few of the partnerships around the room. How did the word sort provide access while maintaining rigor?
Hi, so one thing that stuck out to me, my teachers oftentimes, when I say, make something rigorous, but have supports for everybody, they think, I have to do all these extra things. You don't. And with this, you didn't sacrifice the rigor, the supports are built in. So you're giving them the academic vocabulary. So and it's not overwhelming. So if you're learning foreign language, you see all those words, it's overwhelming. The input is too high, but you're giving them this. You have it on the word wall. So if all they can say is polynomial and they see it on the word and they can use it here, when they get to those tests, that's going to stick out. That's stuck with them. Even your students who are not ELs, it's color-coded, it's tactile. So you're able to do all the same things. They're matching with examples. They're using numbers and colors and putting those together as opposed to having to use all the words. So it's still rigorous, but it's given access. You're covering lots of different things, accommodations that you might have to do in one activity.
Thank you.
I think the piece that we forget too is that, yes, it's EL students in the classroom, but we also have to meet the demands of the Tier 1 student in the classroom. And I look at a task like this and it's a quick formative assessment. Your high kids can quickly go through this, and your students that need that support are getting it immediately. So you've assessed where they are and who needs support, and no one is the wiser in the classroom. And I'm even thinking, taking it a step further, when you're co-teaching in here, your teachers are collecting that data to go back to say, okay, let's pull this small group to do this reassessment on these students because they're still not getting it. They're still not using the words that they need to use strategically, because we know what is ELPA looking for, that academic language. And this was a really quick way to have them using it without reinventing any kind of wheel. They don't have to go to ChatGPT to do this. This is in the classroom, so.
Yeah, I mean, like to your point, I mean, it makes some of what's going on in their head, it makes it visible for you, so that you can go around and help identify those misconceptions. So Blanchette and I have been trying to go around and listen to conversations, and then we're coming and huddling together about, okay, well, I think that they were a little confused on this. So for example, I had moved on from the vocabulary, but then as I was going around and listening, I was like, oh, I think there's still some questions. So real quick huddle with Blanchette. I was like, hey, Blanchette, will you back up a slide just to double check there's not any more questions about the vocabulary. But yeah, so it makes that thinking visible. All right, what else?
I was going to say the collaboration, the peer support, because there are things that she identified that I didn't recognize at first, and it gave me access to the task compared to me trying to do it independently. Because my affective filter was way high, so I overlooked some of the scaffolds that were right in front of me. But I think sometimes a lot of our content teachers might forget the purpose behind the structuring of peer support.
All right, what else?
I like the fact that you gave the example first, and we sort of saw a purpose in matching the vocabulary. And I always give the example that teaching French, I used to go through, all the unit, and then at the end say, and here's this fun project that you're going to do with it. And I had a student on the front row years ago say, why didn't you tell us that 2 weeks ago? I would have been paying attention all this time. I thought he's absolutely right. So now the project is presented first. So I think that this is exactly that. Like, why do they need to care about this vocabulary? And you gave that up front of why I care about it.
Yeah.
Just piggybacking off of what my colleague in the front said a while ago about peer support. Joseph and I discussed how this really drives home the importance of heterogeneous grouping. And how teachers have to be strategic in that heterogeneous grouping so that they learn from their peers.
Yeah, that strategic grouping so important for activities, and I always stress to teachers that your groupings need to change based on need. Like if your kids come in the first day and they sit in the same seats every single day, like that's not meeting their needs. They should change groups often. Absolutely. All right, and then just one more thing, up here we mentioned the affective filter earlier, is I think what I like about doing a word sort is that it is low stakes. I'm sure you guys have experienced, students in classrooms, like they don't want to write something down unless they know it's the right answer. But whenever you have something about the cards and you're moving them around, well, it's, okay, I think it's this, but if I have it wrong, well, let me just slide that right over. It's a very low stakes activity that students aren't as hesitant to engage in, which I think can be very powerful for students as well. Blanchette, anything else you want to add? Good? All right. We just want to real quick talk about what were like all of the components that provided support to students. not just like the word wall or the word sort, but everything that was incorporated. So thinking about routines, mathematical practices, and language supports. So let's take just a couple of minutes, turn and talk to a partner about what were all of the components that helped provide access throughout the lesson.
Very explicit. A lot of times the teacher will say,
turn and talk.
Turn and talk. And then you have one doing all the talking and one
they had
just,
an A and a B, and each one had
and
a
then
chance.
trade, and then after both people get a chance to talk and listen, then discuss your similarities and differences. And that's huge because now it's giving everybody a voice.
Yep.
All right, so let's come back together. So what were those routines, those practices, the supports? What were all of the supports throughout the lesson that provided access?
So one focus areas was talking about constructive arguments and critiquing the reasons for that. So you allowed us that think time before we worked with our partner. And then also you were very strategic and okay, like partner A, okay, you have this much time. Partner B, you have this much time, you know? And I don't think sometimes we realize that for our English learners, we have to plan that. We have to be strategic in that to provide them the opportunity to engage with every task that we're implementing in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So honoring that like private think time, give everybody a second to kind of gather their thoughts before we start shouting things out. And then having that structured talk routine to make sure everybody has that kind of equity and voice. Everybody gets a chance to share the thinking. And so as a student, I get a chance to have my voice heard, but as a teacher, I have a chance to hear all of the voices as I go around and listen. Absolutely. Okay?
I think obviously since you had A and B there, that would be something that was part of your daily routine, that they're used to doing that. So they feel comfortable.
So even something having just a quick visual to go with like what we're talking about so that they have that visual cue for the routine. Absolutely. All right, what else?
I noticed just-in-time feedback. There was some discussion about, and now I'm going to even use the wrong words, but variables versus degrees. And when someone was using the phrase, when someone was using them interchangeably, that there was like that just-in-time. Now let's talk for just a second about what's the difference between those words. And I think that was a really powerful support. Even I had not really thought about the difference between these words until that support came in.
Yeah. So part of that was, working with Blanchette and her math expertise is, she was able to kind of anticipate some of those like common misconceptions that she was expecting. And so then making sure that we were listening to surface that and provide that feedback.
It was really hard. It was very difficult to have a conversation about math in my seat. So just in a lot of the times we forget, like, okay, it's not just for ELA and other subjects, but this is important for them to get this vocabulary orally so that when they're having to write an explanation or really to dive deeper, that's where it goes to that mathematical thinking. So we take for granted the sentence stems until we're put in the spot where I have to explain my thinking. So thank you.
Kind of want to piggyback on Dr. McLean here when she said that you stepped in at the appropriate time to give the support, but you also gave them that time for the productive struggle too, so that they had to think through it and everything. That way when they see it again, they remember the process. You didn't just give them the answer, because that happens a lot in math class for ESL.
Absolutely.
I was just going to add that this did feel like a foreign language to me since I haven't done math in a really long time. And when we were first discussing the problem, I felt like I did not have any vocabulary that I could really use to explain my thinking. But my original thinking actually was correct. I just didn't have the words to say it. So after we did the word sort, I honestly still only understood like 3 of the words. I didn't understand what any of those monomials and polynomials, I didn't understand any of that. But it allowed me to put my thinking into words because I could use like terms and exponents and constants and variables. And so even though I didn't get all of the vocabulary down and understand it all, it allowed me an access point to the content.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and how often, our students come into class and they have background knowledge, they have, information, thoughts that they want to share, they just don't have the language for it. I think that sometimes in the classroom, we can think that if a student doesn't have the language, we confuse that with formalized background. We think if they're not talking about it, it's because they don't know. But sometimes, they do know, they just don't have that language to help you know that they know.
I'd like to comment on the silence, because sometimes the silence is awkward. And I think that is a classroom routine that should be trained, that should be encouraged and should be used regularly, so that when they're directed to have some think time, they're doing thinking and they're not wondering, oh, it's so quiet, why isn't anyone, that kind of self-talk. So I think the silence is an important metacognitive strategy for learning.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as a teacher, sometimes that silence can feel uncomfortable. I'll say right here today, that silence can feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. Students need that time.
We discussed in our group that, and I think it's obvious that, when you had the, for example, like terms, and then it matched with an example and not more words. So that's obvious. But we also talked about the rigor of just the mathematical rigor in trying to match these. That in itself was, I think, a very high level activity, just trying to match these, just mathematical, or for us, it was a very high level mathematical activity.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, even if you didn't get every single term, I think most of us in the room got enough that we were able to engage. Absolutely. All right, Flechette, anything to add to that?
Yeah. The only other thing I would add to it, mathematical practice, I did hear it on the other discussion here, but just be the worked example, right? Taking a task out of your math book and turning it into a worked example. So any mathematical problem can be turned into a worked example, okay?
And that could be true for any subject, not just math. Whether it's a sentence or a question in social studies or an art project, to have a worked example.
All right, so we're going to do a little reflecting. I want you to reflect on the first question first. So now you're going to put back on your educator caps, and you're just going to reflect on how did the demonstration incorporate elements of effective professional learning for adults? So we're going to sit there for a second before we go to the second. So I'm gonna give you a little private think time. We're gonna talk to each other and then we'll share out.
And the 7 components that we talked about at the beginning are listed in your note catcher if you need that to reference.
Okay, at this time, go ahead and share with your elbow partner, somebody next to you, your thoughts around that.
So what about you? What do you think? Do you feel like this would be fun to do with your, in PLCs?
All right, I'm gonna bring you back and let's have some people share out, if you don't mind.
I think the fact that the demonstration was in English is very helpful for the teachers to put themselves in the student's place, because if you had given us the foreign language, it was sort of been, well, I know I don't know that, as opposed to a lesson where teachers are struggling a little bit. But if you ask what words do you not understand, well, you understand all the words, you don't have the context, for example. And I think that's really eye-opening for teachers.
Thank you.
Like I was saying in my group, I've noticed play is universal and it's got no age limit, right? When we do these kind of activities with our teacher teams, they realize, because just like our students, we're so used to our technology now. How many of you guys wanted to cheat on the Google because you didn't know, right? And we get on to our students for it, but we're just as guilty. And a lot of that is just confidence building, letting us know that just because we don't know doesn't mean that we're not effective teachers or we're not highly intelligent and, capable of also being lifelong learners, that we got to practice what we preach with our kids. So I love doing stuff like this, and seeing this in like active time and PLCs and stuff is wonderful. And it actually makes you want to come back the next time we have meetings and bring more to the table.
Thank you for sharing.
So we know our different, the different levels of our EL students, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and so one of the options or suggestions is for them to match, right? And so a lot of the teachers feel like that is something you're doing in elementary school, not something you're doing in high school. But doing this in practice, it's like the rigor was there, and we were matching. And I think actually doing this instead of telling them like, oh, matching is something you can do with a word sort, but having them actually apply that to the content. And actually I'm thinking of like, if I wasn't a math teacher, or if it was a math teacher and instead they're doing something with science or social studies, a different content, that way they truly understand the rigor that stays the same, but I'm still accessing the content. Yep. So just bringing that to life.
Yep.
One of the things that we discussed, and she mentioned going to Google and looking it up. I don't see that as a cheat for my EL kids. I encourage that because if they don't know a term, that could be one of their supports. They can go there and they can look it up and try to figure it out, because if they are uncertain about one thing, it's difficult for them to go to the next step.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think with our students too, to kind of remind us of the importance of teaching them when to use different strategies. Yeah, so let them know, this is an option, here are some situations when, it'd probably be a good idea to go look something up, and then tell them too, but hey, this is probably a time when it's better to persevere and try to figure it out. But yeah, teaching them when to use those strategies, absolutely.
And I just want to go back for a quick second to, I don't know her name, but her comment here, she talked about how it was in English, but do you guys see anything else up there that's sticking out?
Spanish.
Más sentido.
Color coding.
What's that called, Erica?
Strategic translation.
Yeah, strategic translation. So I don't want to put the whole thing in Spanish, right? But I did take a term and I did put it in their native language. So that is also a strategy. Okay, so going back here, now we're going to go to our second bullet. So as a leader, how would you incorporate this in your schools? So let's do a little private think time around that. We're going to share with each other, and then we'll share out some comments around that.
Yeah, and just to kind of focus your thinking a little bit is really thinking about the 7 elements of effective PD, thinking about how you might incorporate those, but then also, I think it's also on your note catcher, is sort of the formula that Blanchette and I have been using for our PDs, which is where you combine a content practice, ELL support, plus upcoming content.
One way to incorporate this is for leaders in their meetings, in their professional development sessions, in any training they deliver to the adults in their district, to begin to adopt some of the strategies in your meetings that you're asking them to do with children, so that you begin to experience it as a learner, if you're a learner, but then as the leader, you're actually demonstrating what you're asking them to do. Principles of andragogy, which is adult learning, require that it be very relevant and very immediately useful. Those are some principles of adult learning. So to demonstrate it and what you expect, I think, meets some of that requirement.
Okay. You guys can go ahead and talk to each other.
It's like, I'm doing this AI training. If you guys want to do it, I think I'm going to do it. I feel like that's like something.
I'm going to bring us back, and I'm just going to ask about 2 or 3 people to share out how you would plan to incorporate something like this in your schools.
I'll share.
Go ahead. I got one right here.
I'm with Collierville Schools, and I serve as a ESL supervisor, but I also
serve as a PD supervisor for the district, and I love this PD. I think it's relevant to not only ESL, not only math, but ELA. I would love to have that redelivered in some structure. My go-to right now, my thoughts are share it with our content supervisors and have them redeliver for each content alongside our ESL lead so that we can kind of like support the ESL and specific PD. But I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the goals that Blanchette and I have in our own schools are we will typically model something like this for a department within a school or something, but we ask that the instructional coach come alongside us so that they can see this process, and then they can then carry on that work and kind of expand it from there for other content areas, for their science, ELA, social studies, etc.
So I really did like this activity, and I'm in a middle school, so I would say I think this would be a great activity to take back to model to the teachers, the andragogy, right? And then have each content area design their own and present it to us in the PLCs. That way we can see how they are actually utilizing it and attacking it in the classrooms. And I think they could easily do like pre and post to see what the results were with and without the activity. So I think it could be very beneficial for us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make the connection between this morning's presentation about instructional coherence and the element that you have included in your PD model, which is the content strategies plus the E&L strategies plus what's coming up immediately in that classroom. And so what I notice is that you are using that same instructional coherence and being really intentional about giving teachers what they need just when they need it. And I think that was a big takeaway for me, is how can I make, even though my instruction is with pre-service teachers who also have field components, but how can I make sure that what I'm doing is really as closely linked as possible to what they're doing in their field experiences too. That seemed really, really meaningful.
Yeah, and another aspect of this, whenever we partner with schools in this work, is that we try to keep the experience to about 30 minutes. So today, larger group, we went, a little longer, but we try to keep it to about 30 minutes, something that we can take up, just part of their planning time, not the whole thing. So small, kind of digestible chunks for teachers to work with.
All right, you ready to go to questions? All right, any questions?
So, how excited are your people to come to y'all's PLDs, PLCs, whatever y'all have, PDs?
You want to take that one?
Well, I asked that because I'm thinking of all the PDs we do. And so it's like, okay, we went in and we were doing unit prep, right? So we had to teach them what it was, So it's like we're always coming at our teachers of like, okay, hey, this is what we got. We're going to teach you and train you on it, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that you guys presented this, it's like I'm thinking of we're doing our math IPG walks, right? So one of the components is the design of the curriculum, which is, I think, solvable something. They solve something at the very beginning, having no idea what they're doing. Solve and share. See, somebody said that. Thank you. You see, I still need to do some practice. But the thing is, though, like you're practicing first, you're getting them engaged. So it's a whole different dynamic of approaching professional development when you guys are coming together, so I just like that. So it's like she was saying down there, it's like I'm engaged, I wasn't 100%, but I feel like in the future, now if I was to give this PD, y'all would have to come and help me because I don't have it down. But I was just wondering, do you guys have PLCs? Is it weekly or is it monthly? To try and give this professional development? Because you said you were doing it in small chunks.
Yeah, so we work with many different schools. So I work with high schools within our district. There's 21 high schools.
Oh, wow.
Blanchette, how many schools?
I don't remember how many middle schools there are, but I work with middle and high.
Yeah. So Blanchette works within a learning community, so she just works with the middles and highs.
My community is just 4.
But with her, so with her school, it's just 4. So she's probably has a little more day-to-day with the PLCs and things. But I will say that at the schools that we've been able to go in and do this, that we get a lot more buy-in from teachers, just simply based on the relevancy of it, and that they see, because teachers hear about PD and they're like, oh great, I gotta go to PLC, whatever. But then I think that once that we can show them like, hey, we are really working hard to make this relevant to your practice, we get a lot more buy-in from them.
And also, someone spoke about it earlier, I don't want you just talking at me, just making sure that experience piece is in there, that the participants get to experience what you're teaching them or, bringing to them. So that is an important piece in Hamilton County as well.
So y'all are my neighbor. I might have to come visit.
Okay.
Anytime.
I have a question. How do you do this type of work, or how does high quality instructional material come into play with this type of work? So it seems to be that you were presenting a strategy which is solved problems, is that, what was I forget the name.
Worked examples.
Worked examples, that was it, like you already worked examples. Is that something that's already in the curriculum that the teachers you're working with are trying to do? Is that something that sort of supplements or innovates the curriculum, I guess is the question I'm asking. Like how closely do you work with teachers about implementing the curriculum they've been asked to implement, or like how much are you teaching them strategies that sort of extend beyond the curriculum?
Okay, so it definitely is not like they don't come with worked examples. Now there are some in the text, but we have this thing, we do learning labs in our community. And so I'm a content lead, so I would lead a learning lab, and the learning lab would show them a worked example, and we'll go through a whole demonstration of how the worked example should be introduced, how it can be created, and then they have a live component. So they go in and they watch a teacher use a work example and how it can be used in their schools and their kids. And you have all those schools. I have 4 schools because I'm over one learning community. And so we'll take those 4 schools and or 2, sorry, it's kind of mixed up, middle, high, sorry. But if I'm doing high school, we'll take all my high schools together and we'll go to one of our high schools in our learning community and we'll see that in live, real time. But we do give them supports on how to create them. And we do point out in the curriculum where they are already, so that when they do have some in the text, with whatever concept they're teaching, they can use those as well.
This seems to be a fairly universal application, because to design a worked example, you just have to have in mind what principles do I want to incorporate in this worked example. And so it seems to me, whether you're a well-resourced district or a small under-resourced district, small staff, large staff, it's still something that a teacher can immediately incorporate, is to begin to design some work examples with the learning in mind.
Yep. And you always want to start with your standards. So we just start with the Tennessee standard and we say, what do kids need to know, understand, and do? Mm-hmm. And then from that point, that will kind of help you create that worked example. You know what they're supposed to be doing. And I will add on, earlier I said we are in partnership with TDG, which is Teacher Development Group. And so a lot of that worked example work comes from them. So that's something you can, talk to your districts about, reaching out to TDG, consulting company. So.
You said TDG?
TDG, Teacher Development Group.
Okay.
And is that something that your district pays for annually, or what type of funding is that, or do you know?
I don't know. I know they pay, but I don't know how much they pay or when they pay.
Is the focus on one content, or is it strictly on professional development?
Repeat the question. Repeat her question.
She said, is the focus on content?
TGG, when they provide services, is it always on professional development? Or is it content specific?
Okay, is it content specific professional development?
Well,
I think we contract with them for math.
But science has had.
But I think that they do other areas as well.
Well, I think that will wrap it up. Wow, this was great. I love math, but this was great, and I learned some new stuff myself. So thank you for this. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.